Hey, everybody. Welcome to the first episode of Unboxing Photography with Ricky and Jim, or Jim and Ricky, whichever way you want to put our name combination, doesn't matter. But we are unboxing photography together. And yeah, welcome. So it's kind of a new concept me and Jim put together. I like the conversations we've been having over the past few weeks, and I had some ideas and I just want to keep putting out content for you guys. I do want to create some intros, and if people are snazzy with some jingly music, send some my way, and we'll use it and we'll shout you out. So, Jim, how have you been?
Well, yeah, I think, hi, what's up, Rick? um, I think it's important to kind of talk about why we called it unboxing photography. Obviously, we've got this isn't super high production value, and maybe that will change over time. But there's a lot of like really slick videos on YouTube with people doing unboxings and things like that, and being very focused on the gear and fetishizing all the gear and stuff like that. And that's what's popular. That's what gets a lot of views and likes. That's just the reality of it. But when we talked about doing something, we talked about let's talk about the actual craft and the practice of photography. So if you're watching this, we're not going to be doing that. Like, we're not going to be those guys that the
Yeah.
camera brands send something through, a month before, and then on release day after the embargo's up, we put something up and we're like unboxing and ooh-eyeing. Like, that's not what this is. So if that's what you're looking for, there's plenty of that out there. This is just going to be talking more about like the practical issues that we deal with as creative people, as photographers. And yeah, we'll talk about cameras because the cameras are tools and we use tools for the job. But if you're looking for, the AMSR video of,
Dang.
someone holding up some brand new thing, that's not this. So
I had my
anyway,
switchblade ready and I was ready to start cutting open that mailed in tape. That's a joke, by the way. I will not be doing
yeah.
that. We will not be reviewing gear. However, if people want to send us gear just to play with, you can send it to us. We won't review it. So there's that.
When I do unboxings, if I get something, because usually I'm getting film. Like the last thing I got a pistol grip from my Rolly from Japan, and it came in the original box and everything. But it's 20 something years old. So every time I do an unboxing of something I bought, it's like it's like this cloud of
Bless.
like dust, and you smell like somebody's old house or whatever. It's not sexy at all. It isn't like the Leica thing with like a little drawer and it like opens up like some present or something like that. It's usually like a bunch of bubble wrap and like and dust, and it smells like mold, not mold, mothballs or whatever. So not
Yeah.
not really appropriate for unboxing videos in any case. So
Yeah. We might talk about gear occasionally, and you mentioned pistol grip for your Rolly. I'd like to see it at some point, but I do kind of want to know. I think you answered this before. I want to know why you decided to go with square format meat when you went to medium, and why the Rolly. Just curious.
Uh, well, I think I mentioned before to you, I've worked in the music business since I was about 19. Started working at a record store and then went to work for record labels and working with artists and things like that. So to me, when I was way back in the 70s, when I first started discovering music, it was all about the album, and the album's a square format, right? And I bet if I just mentioned to you out the word album covers and you think for a second, I bet a whole series of images just went through your mind, like a whole carousel of famous. Like if I said "Born in the USA," Bruce Springsteen, bang, there it is. You see it. If I say "Public Enemy," "Fear of a Black Planet," pops right into your head. Curtis Mayfield, Superfly. Any of these things just kind of like bang into your head, and they're all 12. They're all 12 by 12.
Mhm.
And I found that if you're a documentary photographer, having the space and putting in a frame, kind of almost making it filmic, is what 35 is good for. If you're a documentary photographer. But when you're shooting portraits, which is a lot of kind of what I do, the the length of the frame, it's like I'm including information that I don't necessarily think is important. And if you look at a lot of famous fashion photographers and music photographers, people like David Bailey, Avedon, um, Helmut Newton, Anton Corbin. There's lots and lots of photographers out there who shot in that square format and have done fashion and portrait photography in that within the confines of a square. So when I go back to 35, because I've been shooting 35 recently, like when I went to Paris, I think my shooting style changes because you're thinking more about a rectangle and what is that extra information and how do you make that work? And I actually find the reductive aspect of making a square photograph a little bit easier for me when I'm taking pictures because I see things in a square and I don't have to worry about what's on. I don't have to worry about what that extra information is. So, and in terms of why the Rolly, again, a lot of those people used Rollies. They also used Hasselblads. I have a Mamiya, also a Mamiya C330, which our mutual friend Chris Facey turned me on to the C330, which is a fantastic camera because TLRs typically are fixed lens. You can't change them. And
that one you can.
That you can, yeah. And you can, I have a wide angle for it, a 55 millimeter, which is like somewhere between a 28 to 35. And so to be able to shoot wide and square is very cool if you're trying to shoot outside, like shoot buildings and things like that, and get a lot of information in a square. It's a fantastic little lens. But the Mamiya is a great camera. It doesn't have a meter in it. The Rollies do have a meter in it. But, the Rollies are kind of like Leica adjacent in a way. Like there's that jewel-like, it's made in Germany. The engineering of it, it's really compact. There's nothing extra on it. It doesn't feel plasticky. It's got a certain feel to it. The other difference between the Mamiya and it's funny we say we're going to talk about gear, so I'll wrap this up. But the other difference between the Mamiya and the Rolly is that the Mamiya has a bellows, so you can focus really close, and the Rolly you have to kind of be at least 3 feet back, which is kind of like shooting alike a little bit. So there's different shooting styles on the two cameras. The Mamiya is also a lot heavier, but the Rolly is like, it's small, it looks cool. Everybody, when I go out with the Rolly, people ask me, hey, can you take my picture?
Take my picture.
Because
the icebreaker.
Yo, what is that? And I've got 2 of them. I've got a Magic Flex, which is a Rolly that's remade by a guy in Germany. He gets older ones and he completely takes them apart down to every nut and bolt and then rebuilds them like a brand new camera. And that's an amazing camera. And I also have an Aurum, which is one that is from right before the company went under, and it's got gold plating on it. It's like pimped out and has like lizard, leatherette, whatever. And when you walk down the street with that, kids that see this like camera with all this like gold shining off it, they're like, yo, take my picture. It becomes so easy to take photographs with that camera because people are like, I want my picture taken with that. So that's why. Those are the reasons.
I know exactly what you mean. So really quick, before we wrap it up and we go into the actual theme of today's episode, I was going to get the Mamiya C whatever one you got, and the store that I was gonna buy it from, I was looking around, I was shopping around. I learned my lessons many of times. Never buy the first camera you always see. You'll find one in a better condition for a cheaper cost. So I followed my instinct. I looked around. However, I couldn't find a better version of that camera. This one was super clean, but it had a little tag. And the one thing I like about the Japanese stores is they put what's wrong with the camera. So it's not like they're hiding stuff.
Yeah.
So I was handling it. I'm talking about, it was like super minty. However, the leaf shutter was broke. So it was essentially useless. And I didn't want to invest money into repairing it. So I didn't get that one, and I opted to go with a Minolta auto cord. And the only reason why I got it was because in my head, Minolta stole Leica's technology when it came to the lenses. And I was like, well, it's kind of like shooting a Leica TLR. So that's my story for why I chose the auto cord. So
that works. I mean, I think that, like Chris and I were talking the other day because he wants to get another C30 as a backup because these things are always getting harder to find and more money, and they're not making any more of them, obviously. And the price is going up a lot. But I I buy stuff from Japanese sellers like on eBay because if there's anything wrong with it, they take stuff back immediately. They're really accurate with their descriptions. If they make a mistake, they're like, it's almost like they want to commit seppuku because they
Yeah.
sent you a camera that had a problem. Like they're so apologetic. They're so like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Please send it back. I'm so sorry. I'm like,
Yeah.
it's cool. It's cool. No one's trying to get over. Like when you buy stuff from Japan, especially on eBay and you pay PayPal, nobody's trying to get over. So, yeah, but the Mamiyas are great cameras. TLRs are just a different thing. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've got another friend, Purcell Nurse here, who I shoot with in New York, and he got a TLR. I forget what it was, not one of the mainstream ones, and he was having a really hard time shooting with it because of the reverse thing that a TLR has. So when you're trying to focus, left is right, left is right, right is left, up is down, down is up.
Mm-hmm.
So trying to figure out how to get something correct and straight in the frame is definitely a struggle. But you, like anything else, you stick with it and you learn it. But they're not a super like just pick it up and start cooking with it kind of a camera. Like you have to spend time with it. But they give you image quality, and that's just medium format is just on a completely different level. I mean, especially the Magic Flex that I have has a resolution that it almost looks like digital when if I get the light right. It's and you stop it down a little bit. They're really great cameras. Anyway, enough about gear.
Okay. Yep.
We go through this whole description about how we're not about gear, and then we intro the whole episode with gear.
Correction. All right. We said we were going to not review the gear, not personally.
Yes. We're not going to fetishize the gear. They're just tools. We're just talking about tools.
Yeah, I was just curious. Thank you for feeding my curiosity. But today's episode theme is exhausting the superficial. You mentioned it in the last podcast we recorded. I wrote it down. I lost it, and then you reminded me. So I'd like to go down that path. Kind of, I want to let you lead because I want to see your take, and I'm just going to kind of think super fast like a supercomputer and build off of what you got. So yeah, exhausting the superficial. What do we got?
Well, I think we were talking about it in the context of taking pictures of nothing, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And which to me is kind of like an adjacent conversation. Like if you want to talk about an artist who's kind of a photographic artist who's kind of famous for doing that, Eggleston is somebody who you could talk about in his democratic process, quote unquote, of taking photographs where he would just point the camera kind of at anything. And you'd look at the pictures, and a lot of people don't understand why Eggleston has any renown because of so many of his pictures just look like they're not really considered. Obviously, others are. You don't get into the Museum of Modern Art or by not knowing how to take a photograph. But a lot of his pictures just seem to be pictures kind of nothing. And so you were saying how sometimes you like to take pictures of nothing. And I've done the same thing too. And it's like, okay, well, what is that impulse? And I mentioned exhausting the superficial last time because I think we have these impulses, especially when we're newer photographers, to take pictures of things just because we just have an impulse to kind of take a picture of somebody walking across the street and you take a picture. And in the beginning, you're just happy that it's in focus, or it's generally a depiction of what you thought it was going to be. You achieve some level of success with it. And you kind of shoot that way for a lot, but there isn't an intent behind it. It's just, you're just kind of doing it. You're not really thinking like, I'm trying to build this body of work, or I have this goal that I'm trying to accomplish or something. You're just going out and kind of doing the shooting. And to me, exhausting superficial means when you explore those impulses and when you've done a ton of that, there's something underneath that superficial impulse to take those photographs, to just grab something, to just do this, do that. There's something underneath it that's motivating you to be attracted to that and to take that photograph, right? And the better you get as a photographer, it's like scraping away the layers until you get down to what that thing is. And what that thing is can be something really important. It can be something that can mean a lot to your growth as a photographer, but you have to kind of exhaust all those superficial impulses and all that bullshit and all those pictures that we all take when we're new, like the picture of the girl in the coffee shop window who can't see you because you're shooting through glass, or
She can absolutely see you.
yeah, or the picture of someone, the famous like Alan Schaller type thing where someone's going up a staircase and which is really a fan ho thing, but someone going into a triangle of light and they're dark and you've exposed for the light, so they're in shadow. All those pictures that we take because we just have this superficial impulse to kind of, I want to be able to do that. I'm going to do that. Once you get past all that and you exhaust all those things, you've taken all those photographs, you're edging closer to who you're ultimately going to be as a photographer, I think. So that's what I mean by exhausting superficial. It's just getting rid of all those impulses, getting all that stuff out of our system, and figuring out why am I attracted to that, and distilling so that you get back to what who you are as a photographer, what your style is, and what motivates you and what your creative intent is.
Okay. Would you say it's impulses or is it imitation? Right. So I say that because a lot of times the impulse subconsciously is because you're trying to recreate an image that you may have seen, whether it's a book, social media, regardless. Subconsciously, we keep those images that somehow touch ourselves, like touch inside deep. Oh, I really like this image. And then I know there's been times where I've connected a scene with something that I've saw previously. And what I will say is, initially, when I was really into just kind of being familiar with taking pictures in the street, I did it. I was always taking those pictures, but now I'm kind of more aware of my creative style, my creative, my possibilities that I could do, my experience. Essentially, I know what to take a picture of and what to not take a picture of. So I don't really fall into my subconscious and try to recreate certain looks. And so much so that even before I'll push the shutter discipline, I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. I've taken this before. I don't need to do it again. But then there's those impulses, like you said, that regardless, it just happens and it's a split second. So yeah, trying to see if it's imitation or actual impulses from you.
Well, I thought a lot when you were just saying, there were a lot of things that clicked in my head when you were talking. First thing is, because I used to be in bands when I was in high school. And everybody starts out playing, when they first start playing an instrument or playing a band, they're playing cover songs. It's very few people just start off writing their own thing. Like you do a Beatles song, a Led Zeppelin song, Nirvana. You go into a Guitar Center on a Saturday, everybody's playing Enter Sandman or Sweet Child of Mine or Smells Like Teen Spirit or whatever, or Daisy DC or whatever. Everybody starts by copying somebody else, and we do it as photographers. We want to emulate people that we think are cool. The whole reason why we got interested in photography, most of us, we saw other pictures and we said, I want to do that, or I want to capture that, and then you emulate first to see, can I do that? So the first step in being a photographer is you have those influences and you pursue that, or you indulge in that. And then after a while you say, okay, I'm not going to do that because I'm copying. I've seen this has been done before by this person. So I'm going to transition beyond that. And we all have to kind of go through that. And some people go through it faster than others. There's other people that spend their whole lives copying somebody else's shit. I'm not interested in that, but some people do it. Then the second level is when you realize that you've been copying somebody else's thing and don't want to do that anymore, you do your own work. And then after a while, you get to what you said, which is, I've taken this picture before. I don't want to take this picture before because I've taken it before. And that's another level of it. And understanding that you've taken that piece before, being aware of it in the moment, is progress and growth. And when you've gotten to that place, that's an important, I think, milestone in our journey and our practice of photography. But I will still go out and do some things that I know that I've kind of done before, because maybe I need to, that those things can be a place of comfort while you go out and I'm going to shoot all day. And sometimes I just need to warm up and take some pictures or whatever, or I'm photographing somebody doing a portrait. And I know they're going to want some straight pictures. Like everybody says, can I get full body? Because they're all dressed. They want to see their full body. And a full length body shot to me of somebody just standing in front of a wall or on the street is kind of boring. But I'm going to do it because they want it. And because it just gets me into it, like, okay, I'm framing, I'm feeling it. But then there's something that says to me, if I come away from this and this is all I got out of it, I'm going to get home and I'm going to feel like I've let myself down. So I'm going to do that thing that I've done before, but then I'm going to push beyond that. I'm going to do something I haven't done. So I forget who said it. It's just kind of a cliche statement, but they say, good artists borrow, great artists steal. Copying something or doing what somebody else did, taking aspects of that and rolling it into what you do is not necessarily a bad thing. And as we've talked before about social media tends to reward people who do the same thing over and over again, right? And in music, there's artists like there's this band Fleetwood Mac. You've heard of Fleetwood Mac, right?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, so they put out this record, Rumors, and it was like this just massive. It came out in like 77 or something. It was massive selling record. And then they went back in the studio to make a follow-up. And what the record company wants and what the public wants is they want Rumors 2. They want the same thing to come out, and they're like, I want it to be the same thing that I listened to last time, and because that's what I love. So put that out. And the guy who was the creative kind of force behind the band, this guy Lindsey Buckingham, just was listening to new wave and all that stuff because it was the end of the 70s, and he just went off the deep end and they made a double album set called Tusk, which if you when it came out at the time, everyone was like, what the hell is this? It's just so didn't sound anything like what they had done before. And everybody's like, it's a failure. I mean, it sold millions and millions of copies, but it was kind of deemed like, what did you guys do? What are you, crazy? You just had a mountain of coke and a pile of money and just went in and made this thing that it's just like, what is this? Now, many, many years later, people look at that as a complete masterpiece, brilliant, genius record. But nobody really wanted it at the time.
Yeah.
And social media has that kind of same thing of like, I want your grid to be exactly the same thing. I want people to go there and be able to just throw the popcorn in their mouth. I don't want there all of a sudden to be like a jujube, like your grid has to look the same.
Yeah.
So I think there's some people that fall into that trap of, I'm doing my thing and I need to stay in my lane because I have success and I want to keep that success going. So I'm going to keep doing what I do. And I don't want to bag on Alan Schaller or anybody else, because Alan Schaller, I think, has his lane. He does his thing. It's his visual signature. He does what he does. I would love to see Alan Schaller do something that is not that high contrast, black and white thing that he does, and go onto his feed one day and be like, whoa, see something completely different. But that's just color. Me. The 99.9%, the 99.9%. I mean, the guy has a book out. He's tremendously famous. He teaches people. He's doing fantastic. So to break that is a big risk. But I think for creative growth, I would hate to be in a place where I had a level of success that meant that I had to keep in a particular lane. Yeah. And I don't know, maybe he has other ways of other creative outlets that don't feel, confining. And I'm not bagging on his art at all. I think he's an extremely accomplished photographer, and what he does is, instantly recognizable, and he's very talented, and he seems like a really cool dude too. I just, as a fellow photographer, I get what he does. I know what he does. I see one of his images and I understand it. I understood it when I first looked at it 7 or 8 years ago. I'd love to see something on his feed and be like, whoa, and be surprised. But I'm probably 1% of the audience.
Yeah.
So
I think
to see that. So that's who does the same thing, or do I want to,
I would probably say it's more along the lines of consumerism, consuming whatever it is. I know I'm guilty of being that person that bought the first album and it was just really amazing. And one that came to mind when you kind of mentioned Fleetwood Mac was actually Linkin Park, Hybrid Theory. I really loved Hybrid Theory. And then they released the follow up, Meteora. And first listen, I was like, what is this? This is not Hybrid Theory. This is all kinds of different sounds. And the more I listen to it, the more I appreciate it until now I think it's like one of the greatest albums they ever made. But it's that first, I think it's really our own expectations of what we want, right? And people are selfish, like, especially as a consumer, like you're Linkin Park, and I'm like, I want a new album from you, but you have to make it how I want it, or I'm not gonna buy it, right? And you're like, well, who are you? I don't know who you are. You're not making my music, so I'm gonna do it how I want. And we have no choice but to either buy it and listen or not listen. I bought it and I listened, and I actually love the album now. I think it's consumerism in that aspect. So, and it could be for, you know, camera brands releasing new cameras. You always hear it, right? Oh, what's the follow up going to have? And then people are always saying what they should have. And then the camera manufacturer releases the camera with everything that the consumers didn't want. And then they bash it. And then I was like, whoa, wait a minute. This actually makes sense. So I think it's a lot of consumerism mixed with our own expectations of selfishness of what we want. And since we're the ones buying it, like you got to do everything that we're requesting, or your product is just not sufficient. If that makes sense.
But meanwhile, Steve Jobs talked about this pretty much extensively, and he said that people really don't know what they want, and that
Mm-hmm.
if you're gonna, and that basically the job is to give them something they didn't know what they wanted, but then they can't live without it, and that you delight
Yeah.
and surprise them. And I don't think Apple has done the delight and surprise thing in a really long time. A really long
Mm-hmm.
time. They might not have done it since he's died. I think Tim Cook is really good at like maximizing the distribution chain and getting product out there and getting it all over the place and saving every penny on manufacturing and distribution and all of this stuff. But in terms of like, other than the Vision Pro or whatever it is, that those glasses, which are kind of a goof now, you know, that wasn't, that was certainly not a home run. I don't even know that that was a single.
Yeah.
You know, that was maybe a walk. You know, so
Mm-hmm.
but it does get back to what we're kind of talking about, which is social media. If you want to exhaust the superficial, social media is the most superficial thing that's probably ever been created in the history of mankind, right? Um, because you see these extremes of human existence, like incredible creativity and total trash, next to human suffering, next to a video of Khloe Kardashian. You know, like there's all this stuff, and it all kind of ends up being the same. Like there isn't really, like if you just scroll down the feed, there's nothing that's drawing you in and giving you some level of emotional impact that that's significant, right? It's an extremely superficial way of consuming things. So it's a smart thing in a way. The people who are kind of doing the same thing and who are working those platforms are smart enough to know. And there's other people that I could mention here who do the same thing, who are not Alan Schaller, who are other photographers that we know, we're friends with and stuff, who are kind of doing variations of the same thing, like just serving. Like
Mm-hmm.
Manaris is somebody who understands what the platform is, what people want. Um, Joe, what's his name?
Joe Greer, your favorite?
Yeah, yeah. Again, not begging on him. He understands what the algorithm, what the platform wants. You know,
Mm-hmm.
these are people who understand these platforms and have huge followings and have extracted something out of it that works for them. And whether or not you like their photography, you have to acknowledge the fact that they understand how to package things and what the audience is going to want. You don't see anything on that goes on there that's outside that lane.
Yeah.
I do think that there's a danger if you hitch a wagon to that, and we've talked about this before, but if you hitch a wagon to that and say, I'm going to create and package my work to serve a platform. Then when the platform goes away and it turns into something else, as these things do, because they have their, all of them have their ascent and their peak and then their decline, right?
Yeah.
And the question is, if you're somebody who's so married to the aesthetics of a particular platform and how that works and servicing that algorithm and everything, is your work going to be lasting beyond the existence of that particular medium?
I'm gonna pose I don't know if it's controversy or not, but kind of building off of what I was saying about expectation, we'll go into the social media realm of this expectation. Is it possible that when other people view our work, their expectations of another person's photography that they're viewing is to resemble a well-known photographer, right? And I'll give you an example. Say I shoot black, well, I shoot black and white. So I create an image, I post it, it's in black and white, and kind of who are the most well-known black and white photographers out there? Phil Penman, Alan Schaller. Do you think it's possible that these people are subconsciously expecting us to create a photo that is mirror identical to Phil Penman and Alan Schaller, which is kind of why people will start bashing on you, like, oh, you're just trying to copy their style. Now, the contradicting part about that is any any experienced photographer will say, you can give us the same camera, we can shoot the same subject, but we'll always get a different image. How does all of that play into that process?
The first thing is, and I will, people who have ever listened to me talk with you or anybody else, have heard me reference this person before. But, when I did my mentorship with Ralph Gibson, he said, and you can watch in interviews, he doesn't care at all, never thinks even slightly about what the audience thinks about his photograph. He's not thinking about it when he takes it. He's not thinking about it when he puts it out there. He's doing it entirely for himself. So I think you are a certain type of photographer if you are thinking about what the audience thinks, and another type of photographer if I don't give a fuck what the audience thinks. Those are two very different types of photographers. With respect to Phil and Alan Schaller, because you mentioned them, the audience is not educated about the history of photography for the most part. Neither one of those guys, and this is no shade to either one of those guys, neither one of them are doing something that nobody's done before. Neither one of them are not taking pictures that other photographers have not taken. I mean, again, I mentioned with Alan Schaller, like the person standing in a triangle, like Fanho took that picture in like 1961. And there's lots of people who've taken, kind of moody cityscape, the type of thing that Phil does. They do it really, really, really well. But the thing is that the audience comes to Instagram or any of these platforms and many photographers also have a conversation with photographers and say, who are your favorite photographers? If you are a huge fan of Alan Schaller and of Phil Penman, and I'm going to go back to music again. There's modern guitar players that you can listen to and modern musicians. And then when you listen to them talk about their influences, they'll go back and they'll say, oh, I was influenced by so-and-so. And then you start going back and back and back. And you realize, like, there's very few people that are doing something completely original. We're all standing on the shoulders of giants. We're all doing work. I'm sure Phil and Alan would both say that there are people who've influenced them and they're doing work that kind of may be perceived as similar to somebody else, but they're bringing their own kind of thing to it, their own perspective to it. But they haven't invented something. They haven't invented a genre of photography. But the audience, for the most part, and many photographers, because I talk to them in New York all the time, and you talk with them for 5 minutes about photography, and you're like, you've never heard of Robert Frank? Like, really? And I guess that's okay. If not everybody has to go to like photography school or art school and get a degree on photography and know the entire history of photography, but it's beneficial if you really want to understand what is this photographer doing? Where did they get this from? Where did this craft come from? What do I want to do? If you can contextualize that with everything else that's out there, you might end up doing something that looks more like you. If you only look at like a couple of people and start doing your work, it's probably going to be a little bit of a challenge to arrive at your own style. And then I'll say one more thing and then stop talking. But one of the other things Gibson said to me is, if you haven't led an interesting life, you're not going to take interesting pictures. Mm-hmm. And we talked about all sorts of books and other art forms and all the things that he looks at and influenced him. And a portion of it is photography, but there's many other things: dance, literature, music, cooking, traveling, film, painting, all these other kind of things that you can look at and extract stuff from. Like if you go on the Criterion channel and just watch some Italian movies and say, look, how is that framed? Where did the light come from? Where are the pictures? Where are the subjects in the frame? What do the close-ups look like? What's the contrast like? All these other kind of things. You take that and then you go to another country and, just walk around at night. You're absorbing all this stuff, and then that's coming out in your work. And the more rich you make that, it's like adding spices to the recipe, Mm-hmm. And if all you do is stay in your kind of backyard and look at a couple of different photographers, then all you're going to make is hamburgers and hot dogs, And if that's what makes you happy, cool. But if you're trying to aspire to something greater than that, you have to go beyond these superficial kind of attractions to people and say, all right, here's two guys that I like that are hugely popular on Instagram. Or somebody like Manaras, like who's got a massive following and has pictures that look a certain way. You're like, okay,
color grading.
Let me let me figure it out. But that's it. Yeah. And I think a lot of we've talked about it before. I think a lot of her pictures are kind of,
they're graded really
they can seem to be more about the style than anything else, but that's okay. That's okay. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people love it. And a lot of people enjoy it. The important thing is, you as a photographer, what are you looking at? Do you understand what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Do you understand why it's good or why it's bad, or who did it in a similar way 20 or 30 years ago, or who this person might be copying? They might be a great copy. They might be better than the person who originally did it. They might have moved the idea a little bit down the road, or are they just like a hack who's copying somebody else's shit? If you don't actually educate yourself and go out into the world and learn, mm-hmm. and just look at what you're being bombarded with on social media, you're never really going to be good. You're going to think that like a Whopper is the best hamburger in the history of the world. And there's a lot of people who do think Whoppers are the best hamburger in the history of the world. But that may be because that's the only hamburger they've ever had.
Yeah. I remember when Whoppers were 99 cents plus tax was $1.05. And I used to scrap up 105 pennies from my uncle's. He had that big water jug just where you just throw pennies in there. And I used to count 105 of those. And I used to go to Burger King and just dump them. They hated me because they knew every time that I was coming in there, I was coming in with 105 pennies.
100 pennies.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they couldn't say no. Anywho, moving on to the educational piece, I'm glad you said that because kind of this week I've had some free time, and I started going down the path that I always do of just researching the philosophy of photography based on different photographers using ChatGPT. I like the idea that ChatGPT kind of surfs the internet for me at super high speeds, and it gathers all public information. So that's why I kind of like using it. And then I kind of just plugged in some photographers' names, and then going into Ralph Gibson, I actually started looking into his photos. And Ralph Gibson, one of the greatest photographers of our era, so much so that he's considered like a grandmaster. I don't know how you become a grandmaster, but he's a grandmaster. And I was like, I know some of his work, I know some of his images, but I want to know, kind of going back into the conversation we had about Henry Cartier-Bresson, I want to know about the unknown works, the not so popular ones, right?
Yeah.
So I was scrolling through, And I do got to say, Ralph Gibson has a certain look that when you see it, you know it's a Ralph Gibson image. And
Yeah.
I don't know if it's how he edits his photos and posts or if he does it, but there's just something about the way he puts that contrast that, like, even if I was to try it, I wouldn't get, like, I wouldn't want to, again, recreate it to 100% of what Ralph Gibson is. But he just has this unique ability to create something that, like, you see it and you're just like, wow. And if I was to measure like the contrast levels, it's probably only like a contrast of probably all the way right where the contrast is just like white, a few shades of gray, and then extreme blacks, right? So
Yeah,
I
which
asked,
I tend to, my black and white tends to be that way too.
mhm. I asked ChatGPT to kind of summarize Ralph Gibson's photography, his style, and philosophy initially in 3 sentences because I like to challenge people. I want to see what they can do. And it came up with 3 really good sentences. So much so I wrote some of it down in one of my little books of
All
knowledge.
right, let's hear
And
it. Let's hear it, man.
nope. I'll share those in another because I gotta find it. There's different
All right.
pages. But then after they gave me the 3 sentences, I said, okay, now summarize it in one word. And they gave Ralph Gibson abstract. And I seen it, and then just like one image comes to mind where it's like tetrapods. You know what tetrapods are?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's like this group of tetrapods, and then it's like this man kind of standing. He took a picture of his back, but in typical Ralph Gibson 135 millimeter fashion and or cropped, I don't know. It was a really great image for me, and I was like, man, I really like this image combined with his high contrast editing style, post process, whatever he did to the image. It was a really good image, and I was like, it's so simple and it's so basic, right? You take a picture of some tetrapods with a person in it, but not everyone can do that.
Well, it starts with understanding what the most important things in
Mm-hmm. That's Ralph
taking that
Gibson
picture
talk
are
there. That's because
for
you
for
spoke
him.
to him. That's cheating.
Yeah, I did, and yeah, and well, and I'll save people a bunch of money because I'll tell them what he
Yeah.
told me. We never talked about post. We never talked about post at all
Mm-hmm.
when I talked to him. Not even the slightest little bit. What we did do, because you have to send him over as part of the mentorship, I had to send him over like a dozen images, and then he basically gave me some comments about my images, and then
He humbled
he
you.
said a lot of nice things about my pictures. Yeah, then he humbled me by saying, I just have one question for you. When the fuck are you going to take responsibility for your frame?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, what? And then what happened was over the 4 sessions that we talked just a tremendous amount about a lot of different things, but the frame was always prevalent in the conversations. And what that meant was, you're responsible for everything that's in the frame. And he's not doing like a snatch and grab, like street photography style. He abhors that. He is very calculated in terms of composing, and maybe because he's thinking like abstract painters and things like that, and just painting in general. And musical composition is all about, you have a certain measure of time and what notes you're going to put in that measure of time. You're a painter, you're a photographer, you have a frame. What are you going to put in that frame? And what are the relationships between the shapes in that frame? What are the relationships between dark and light? And how do you move your camera?
Mm-hmm.
Because the type of photographer he is, he's taking pictures of things. So it's not sports photography. He's not trying to capture somebody running through a frame. He's composing something. So when he's composing something, he's saying, okay, if this thing at the top of the frame is really bright and it's taking up a lot of the top of the frame, you're not going to the person's eye isn't going to look at the rest of the bottom of the frame because this is bigger and it's also brighter. So that's where everybody's eye is going to go. So in order for me to have balance in the frame, I have to think about the relationship between the brightest thing and the darkest thing, and between this round shape and this round shape, or these particular shapes, how they interrelate. And is if one is big, a lot bigger than the other, is there a reason why it's bigger? Or is it just a coincidence? With all of his images, there's balance in all of the light, the dark, the relationships of the shapes, the sizes. All of these kind of things are in harmony, and he does it instinctively. But it's something that if you look at all of his photographs, you don't look at any of his photographs and go like, "What's this weird thing in the corner?" or what that is distracting me from this other thing. Everything makes the image stronger. So it's like the first thing is, here's the frame, then what is the picture about? And the way that you're putting the shapes in the frame and the way that you're dealing with the light and dark, does it strengthen that, what the picture's about, or does it detract from it? And he told me what he started doing with my pictures was he started cropping them. I'm sitting there and he just like pulled my picture up on the screen and he started cropping them and showing me where I had made compositional decisions that were detracting from the strength of what I was trying to say in the photograph. So he said, you can do this with your pictures. I'm giving you permission to crop, because once you crop on the desktop after you get home and you do it enough, you'll start to see what makes the picture stronger. And then when you go out in the real world, you'll be cropping in camera, not when you get home. So be okay with cropping. So when people tell me, oh, I don't crop and cropping's cheating and everything, there's a lot of reasons why that's complete bullshit. But
yeah,
not the least of which is that some of the best photographs in the history of photography have been cropped. But
James Dean's photo was cropped.
Arnold Newman's picture of that composer, I'm forgetting who it is, the pianist, and there's like it's, I think Phil said it's like one of his favorite photographs in one of the interviews that maybe you did with him or somebody else did with him, I can't remember, but that's a crop of a bigger image. You do it long enough and you start seeing what you want to do, in camera. So when you look at his work, what people generally don't think about in photography, and a lot of it is because they're just blasting away. And maybe this is one of the things that helps with film photography, is because it's expensive, you don't blast away, and so you think about it a little bit more, so your pictures get better because you're taking a little bit more time, because you've got 36 shots and it's going to cost a lot of money to develop and scan, so you're not just blowing frames, right? So that's why I think it's helpful for some people who are really trying to learn photography to do film, because it gets them more thinking a little bit more, and especially with a rangefinder. But anyway, that thing of thinking about what's in the frame, if you want to judge your pictures, put them out and say, is everything here in balance, in harmony? Is the dark and light in harmony? What's the picture about? And is there anything in here that's competing with what the picture's about? Or all the compositional elements strengthening what I think the picture is about? Mm-hmm. And that is a much more important thing to think about than any gear question or consideration that you could ever have. And very few people, I find, when I talk to photographers, including a lot of photographers who I really respect, people who I really respect and who are really, really good will have those kind of conversations with me. People who are like still learning, I never hear them talk about the frame, and I never hear about the relationship of the things in the frame to each other, or what the picture's about.
Yeah.
You say, like I see in Ruben Ratting's stuff, like he'll ask somebody, what's this picture about? And there's somebody in the center of the frame that the picture's about. But then there's all the stuff that's happening off on the sides, and it's distracting. It's from what the photograph is. So, and they didn't even notice it. They just think it's a good picture because the person in the middle who's eating the hot dog is in focus, and they think, oh, isn't this great? But then the things off to the side are totally competing with that, and they have nothing to do with the person in the middle. And then when somebody like Ruben shows them and tells them, they go, oh, so what do you got to do? Get closer, change your orientation to where the person is, so you can cut out some of that stuff out of the frame. It's harder to do, I think, in street photography than it is in the kind of thing Ralph Gibson does. Anyway.
I think a lot of it comes with experience, and actually I did mental exercises, and a lot of it was reading stuff, and kind of, I like to use this example because I actually trained myself in this aspect, was going back into Henry Cartier-Bresson's The Decisive Moment book, The Mind's Eye, not The Decisive Moment, excuse me, The Mind's Eye, where he actually talks about composition and that everything in your frame is there intentionally. So much so that before I pushed it, kind of agrees with Ralph Gibson's concept was, you have to mind what you're composing. And before I would shoot, I'd be like, oh, that's not supposed to be there. And then, the more you do it, the more you develop that natural instinct that when you look and you're framing through your frame lines, you're like, oh, that shouldn't be there. Let me move and get either closer or tighter. I like to use the frame lines to kind of find my distance. So now, depending if what the situation is, and I got enough time to compose, I'll take some time. As before, I seen something I liked and the impulse is going earlier, and then going back, I'm like, oh man, there's just so much useless stuff in here, and I actually don't like this photo as much as I like what I saw. The more the experience, you just kind of learn what to do. But you got to keep it in mind. If you go out, I study mindfulness and mindless. If you go out mindlessly, you're just taking pictures, and that goes into you're just taking pictures on impulse. So you're going out mindfully, you're going out with impulse, with an agenda, with your experience, with intent, all of that, and you're actually probably creating better images. So,
well, that's what Gibson refers to as, a point of departure, which is what Dorothy Lang educated him about. It's just knowing like what you're actually trying to get, because then you'll have a better chance of getting it. But here's the thing. Again, it's such a monolithically obvious thing that nobody thinks about, and I never hear anybody talk about in photography podcasts, on any videos on YouTube, anywhere. And it's such an obvious,
unboxing camera.
Staggeringly obvious thing. Well, any famous picture you've looked, any picture by Diane Arbus or Steve McCurry or Mary Ellen Mark or Susan Marcellus or Cartier-Bresson's an obvious one, but Don McCullin, Larry Burrow, war photography, fashion photography, documentary photography, Bruce Davidson. Look at the frame. Look at what's in the frame. There is no bullshit in the frames. You get famous pictures, famous war photography. The picture Don McCullin took of the shell shock soldier. Well,
Napalm Girl.
Kappa is not somebody who I would look at as being that's not Kappa, but that's actually that's a whole other conversation about who actually took that photograph, and there's a bunch of controversy about that right now. But Kappa's frames, if you look at Kappa's frames, he doesn't strike me as like a photographer who I look at his frames and go like, these are all brilliant frames.
I have to defend Kappa because he was rolling around with like a 8x10 camera in the middle of war. He even died taking pictures of war. So there's that.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I'm not bagging on Kappa. I'm just saying that if you look at his frames, I think that there's other photographers you could look at who are examples of people who have super tight frames and have an amazing sense of composition and geometry and light, dark, respect to shapes and everything. I think Kappa was kind of inventing a genre of photography. He was inventing, him and Gerda Taro were inventing war photography in the moment, and I don't think he was really thinking, let me make sure that my, the relationship with shapes in this photograph while people are shooting at me is good. Mm-hmm. Other people, though, if you look at Don McCullin's work, you look at Larry Burrow's work, you look at their really famous bits of their work, they're elevating the composition. They're not just picking up a camera and go, oh, a guy throwing a grenade. It's there's a guy throwing a grenade, and where is he in the frame, and what else is in that frame? But literally every genre of photography, any good photograph that you look at by any good photographer, there is no bullshit in the frame. There's nothing distracting the frame. Everything's there for a reason. It's all compositionally aware. It all respects the frame. And where 99% of people fall down and make shitty photographs is they're thinking about one thing in the frame and not the entirety of the frame. They're only thinking about the one woman walking through Bryan Square Park eating a hot dog. Let me get that in focus. And then there's all this other bullshit in the frame. You go how come my pictures don't look like Henry Cartier-Bresson? Well, because there's all this other stuff in your frame that you're not even paying any attention to. Don't you see it? That's what Gibson said to me. Don't you see that this is in your frame, distracting? How can you not see this? Because I'm not Rob Gibson. I didn't know. But then when he pointed it out to me, it was obvious as anything. You know, it was really obvious that there were things in there that were competing with what I was trying to say. Yeah. But pick up any photo book. That's why when I see people whose frames who are popular and successful, and you know, Phil and Alan Schaller, their most successful photographs, pretty much all their photographs, or the vast majority of their photographs, have total awareness of what's going on in the frame. There's nothing incongruous in there. There's nothing in the frame that shouldn't be there. Nor should it be, given the style of photographs that either one of them take. But they're aware of the frame, and anybody who is listening to this who wants to get better at their photography needs to look at the entirety of the frame and everything that's in it and say, is everything in there? Should everything be there? And is it supporting what I'm trying to say in photographs?
Definitely agree. So really quick, before we wrap this segment up and go to the next one, I do want to touch on one last Ralph Gibson point. I seen the Leica 100 videos where that one guy doing the walkie-talkie of all of the famous people who actually went to the Leica 100. He runs up to Ralph Gibson, and then you listen to him he asked the same exact questions to everyone. And like one of the questions that I'm going to refer to is like, oh, carefully compose or capturing the moment. And then Ralph Gibson was the only one that had like the best answer out of all the people he asked this same question. So
he said, shouldn't it be both? Isn't that what he said?
Yeah. Why aren't I doing both? It should be
or
both.
Shouldn't I be? He said, shouldn't it be both? Yeah.
Yeah. It should be both. You should carefully compose and capture the moment at the same time.
But what does that tell you? That it's an either or? What does it tell you that there's a guy who's asking that question of all these other photographers, and people are saying it like there's like one has more importance than the other, or one is less important than the other?
Yeah.
It tells you that there's a difference between doing it as an artist or just.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think, look, my pictures, I'm not saying, I don't want anyone to listen to this and think that my pictures are better than anybody that I've mentioned on this podcast, or better than their pictures, or that I'm saying there's only one way to do things, that you have to do things a particular way. But if you look at people who are artists, who are making work that will be viewed at for many, many decades to come, that will exist outside of trends in social media or trends in social trends or any of that kind of stuff, those people who are truly artists have a different way of thinking about what they do. And I think personally, I'm a lot more interested in hearing what they have to say and how they go about their work, because I would like to get my work to that place. I don't know that I ever will. I probably won't, because I'm chopping away at it at my age. And if I was 20 and had this approach, then maybe by the time I was the age that I'm at, I would have a body of work that you could say was artistically significant. I tell myself, in whatever limited time I have left on this planet, I'm going to try to aspire to do that. Yeah. And I don't want to do bullshit.
Go back to cropping. But got to crop. That's jokes, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. Hey, one thing I wanted to point out is my T-shirt.
Yeah, I've been
this guy. This is a photograph of a guy looking through binoculars. There's a T-shirt company called One of 100 out of the UK, and they make 100 T-shirts. And then when they sell it out, it's like done. And when they put it up, you have to order it like right away, or they're gone. And it's all usually around musicians or artists or writers. It's like cool stuff. One of 100 UK. But this is Mick Karn, who's a bass player from a band called Japan. He played with a bunch of other people too, but that's what he was most known for. And the reason I'm mentioning him is because it kind of gets to what we were talking about originality. He's this guy who, if you listen to his bass playing, he doesn't sound like anybody else that's come before or since. He's like this weird alien dude that has this style. Like if you talk to any bass players, anybody that's heard their music, he is not copying anybody else's shit. It's the way he plays, the way he sounds is just completely different. And it's like, where did that come from? And when you listen to their music, you're like, what is this guy doing? It's just so weird. And he was just a really interesting character. Unfortunately, he died about 10 years ago of cancer. But the reason I mention him is he's one of the rare exceptions to the rule where somebody just shows up and they just have talent and they're different and they didn't learn it from anybody. They didn't copy anybody else's thing. They just, and maybe because they were trying to go about it completely the wrong way and they ended up being themselves. So I'm not saying that you can't have these like prodigies or these geniuses that just kind of turn up and you look at them and you go, damn, the person picks up a camera and they look at her, look at what she's doing. Like, how does she do that?
Yeah.
Those people are out there, but it's pretty rare. But if anybody listening, anybody who's into music wants to listen to somebody who is like completely original and weird, listen to Mick Carnes playing in the band Japan, get Gentlemen Take Polaroids, or
he's a weird alien.
Or tin drum. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah.
Cool guy.
I'm gonna look him up after on some YouTube. But now the next segment I would like to go into is actually photos of the week. So I got your photo of the week, and I'm going to pull that up really quick. But before I do, I want to kind of remind you, I was scrolling endlessly, excuse me, and Meta has this weird way of recording your voice on your mobile device when you're not fully aware. And then all of a sudden, stuff that you talked about pop up. So before we go into the photos of the week, I'm going to show you something that we talked about the last episode. There's the share. All right, so there's the share. We will go here. So there it is.
Oh, that's one of those tiny little buildings that's between big buildings. That's cool. Wow.
Yeah. So this is what you will see throughout Japan, and look how historical it is.
That's awesome.
There's, the developers, they'll wait you out. Eventually they'll sell, they'll knock it down, and then they'll actually build a new building in that small little space. So it's cool to see. I've seen these numerous times. So much so it's like kind of natural now. But it's always great to see anyways, because you're like, wow, look at this historical building. And look at the architecture and the building, how they did this. This is very retro and vintage and historical looking, right? That's a traditional Japanese style. So yeah, this still exists. Awesome. And yeah, I like to see it every now and then. And if I got a wide angle lens, I usually try to snap it. But look at the frame. I think everything that needs to be here is there. Maybe these sticks could have been removed and should have moved closer. I don't know. That's jokes, by the way. Anyways, just wanted to share this image.
Very cool.
Now we'll go into your photo of the week, and then I will kind of let you explain why you selected this, who the photographer is, and what the image means to you, or whatever else you'd like to share. This one. All right, there we go.
Drum roll. Okay. So this is, if you look in the lower corner, Shan Snaps, that's the IG tag. This is not my picture. Don't misunderstand that it says my name at the top of the frame. That's just because I forwarded this to Rick. Shan Snaps is my friend Rashawn. He is a really just interesting photographer. Just gets out there in the urban environment. I think this looks like New York, but I think he's from Philly. And it looks like two guys about to like throw down. It just kind of looks a little bit Lower East Side. It looks Lower East Side-ish. I'm not sure where he took this photograph. It definitely looks like New York, because he does come up to New York to shoot. But this is a series. Like if you go on his feed, he's got a series of about 10 photographs, and it's just all stuff that's taken at night. It's gritty, it's grainy. It feels like the city. And the reason why it speaks to me is when you're walking around New York City, or really kind of any urban environment, especially as a photographer at night, you're always kind of waiting for things to happen. And sometimes you can feel the potential for just uncool situations. And maybe it's somebody yelling down the street or somebody drunk. You can kind of see it happening sometimes. And he gets out there and he comes across these things and shows that side of the city, especially at night. He's a film photographer primarily, and this just, you can see the anger in the guy's face on the right hand side. I know right now, if I had to bet on who was going to win this fight, it would be not the guy who looks all angry and has his fist up to his head. It would be the guy who's got like, who looks like he's ready to just like hit this guy one time and put him on the ground. But I also think it's kind of hilarious that the guy's standing on the corner, just like looking at his phone, like waiting for an Uber or something. It's like, oh, well, yeah, some guys are about to beat the shit out of each other in the middle of the street, whatever. Where's my Uber? Or whatever. It kind of says a lot about, I mean, I've seen stuff like this happen in New York City like a zillion times, where there's been something that's completely insane next to somebody who can't be bothered because they've seen so much insanity living in the city that it doesn't even register. So it would be less of a strong image to me if the guy wasn't on the corner. Because think about what makes this a cool image. Yeah, there's this like potential these two guys are going to fight, but look at the fact that there's somebody in the corner who just doesn't give a shit at all. They look so nonplussed by the fact that this is going to happen, and that's the city. It's all this crazy stuff happening, and some people are freaked out about it, but a lot of people are just like, whatever. And that's the city. I also love that kind of, the way the light is flaring across different parts of the photograph. I like the fact that it isn't super sharp. These kind of photographs, when they're not super sharp, when they've got a little bit of blur, to me give a sense of movement, and it makes it feel alive. I don't really like to see these kind of pictures taken on high resolution digital cameras because it removes some of the danger and the organic aliveness of the photograph. That's just my opinion. Other people might disagree, obviously, but I think this is composed really well. It's got a lot of interesting things going on in the frame, and the fact that there's the person standing on the corner, to me, makes this image way better than it would be if he was not there.
So I definitely agree. The first scene that caught my attention was definitely the person standing in the corner. And by the look of the angle and degree of his phone, he's probably waiting for the Uber, as you mentioned. If he was recording this for social media, it looked like it'd probably be higher. But I think because he's just there, like, I'm trying to leave here, kind of adds to the strength of this photo, kind of like basically reinforcing what you said. And I actually got my money on this guy who's clenching his teeth. Looks like he's got an ice cream cone in one hand and his shoes don't match. So he looks like he's been through a couple wars already. And usually a lot of these videos have been popping up on my Instagram feed for some reason. These are always the guys that get knocked out with one hit. So I'm going with this guy as the winner.
Trust me, man. I've been living and working in New York City since the 80s. The guy on the right, who's all pissed off, he's getting knocked out. The guy on the left, who looks chill, you see where his hands are?
He's got a gun.
The other guy's like the guy's all upset. He's all angry. He's all acting out and everything. He's going to be in the middle of yelling, and he's going to come approach that guy, and that guy's just going to reach out with that long arm, that long right. He's just going to go pow right in that guy's nose, and that guy's going to go down. And the other thing is, if you think about it for a second, look at the frame and think about the fact that he's looking through the viewfinder at this. I can tell you that the danger of doing what he's doing right now, looking at this photograph, is that angry guy could at any second turn to him and go, "Why are you going to take a picture of this?" And then just come right at him, walk right past the guy he was about to throw down with, and come right at the photographer and be angry because he's like, "Why are you taking a picture?" Mm-hmm. So to stand there that close, this is probably, I'm guessing, a 28 that he's shooting with. Well, maybe 28. Yeah. To be that close to this you're very close to the periphery of the zone of getting involved. And then, you're going to have somebody on your ass.
Yeah.
When people are about to throw down like that, the first thing you learn in New York City is when you see these kind of things about to happen, is if you're going to look at things, you have to make sure there's like a little bubble where all that energy is, and you have to know where that bubble is and stay kind of outside it, because if you get too close, you make too much eye contact, you look like you're too involved, you look like you're there for your entertainment, you
Yeah,
might
you're getting
become part of
involved.
the entertainment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I've
So anyway,
definitely
that's why I like it.
seen these scuffles in Chicago. I'm sure you've seen these as well. Gang members knock girlfriends out. Oh, you can't talk to my boyfriend, and then she's sleeping next to the boyfriend. So I've seen it all. I've seen all kinds of stuff in the city. So
Yeah.
we'll go to the image that I selected. Now, I do want to preface this is by coincidence only when we started talking about war photography and Robert Capa. My image is not Robert Capa's, but it is a war image, and I'll explain why I chose it once I bring it up. So where is it at? It is right here. I selected an image from one of my favorite photographers who I actually went down the dark rabbit hole in ChatGPT, W. Eugene Smith. The guy is the father of the photo essay, as they say, and his work speaks for itself. Now, carefully composed, I don't know. Tell me what you think about that. Look at this. I at first when I seen the image originally, I thought it was on the island of Okinawa, but then after doing my research, this is actually Iwo Jima, and I still think it's an amazing photo, and just his technique of dodging and burning, which he was very great with, is at it's a class of its own. You got your soldiers here up front, which probably are Marines. So Marines and or soldiers from the Army. Don't know which ones, but service members nonetheless. And then there's just this right here. To me, I would say this is the subject, and these are your supporting actors.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, when you first thing that strikes me about this image, other than the fact that it's completely composed and completely well balanced, is that he's done a lot of post work on this, because the he's exposed it in such a way that you've got detail in that white puff of smoke coming out of the middle of that explosion cloud, and then but there's still detail in right to the left of it in the black portion. It's not totally black. And if you're going to expose and get detail in that white cloud and then still get detail in the black cloud, which is directly to the left of it, then it's an almost impossible thing to make a metering decision that's going to serve both of those masters at the same time. You're going to have to work on it in post. And then if you look at the guys at the bottom of the frame, it's not important to see their faces. You see their helmets. Their helmets are obviously very bright white, but they're really well exposed. And then the trees around them are almost completely black. The only thing in this picture that I don't like, the only thing, is if you look at the two soldiers on the left, and there's like a little V between them. If you go straight up that V, you see this little bit of white at the top of a branch that's in the middle of the black cloud. You see what I'm talking about?
Yeah, right here. This right there.
Exactly. I would, in Photoshop, I would have taken that out, because I think when I looked at this frame, it's one of the first things that my eye went to, because it's a piece of light that's within a dark cloud. That's the only thing in this picture that I would change if it was on my editing screen and it was my photograph. But otherwise, it just looks completely surreal. All the trees look just burnt and knocked down. All those guys huddling behind a rock so that they don't get hit by the shrapnel and the debris from the explosion.
The trees.
Yeah, you wonder, is that thing that almost looks like a bird in the upper right hand corner of the frame, is that a piece of tree, a piece of earth? Is that somebody's torso? What is that?
Yeah.
And this is got a lot of black in it, and it's got a little bit of white, but it's got these kind of really nice
Mhm.
whitish kind of gray tones to it. There's a lot of tonal gradation in this image. It's a brilliant photograph. Just a brilliant photograph. But you're cheating because you picked one of the best photographers of all time as your photo of the week, man.
I gave you
I picked an
opportunity. I said
Instagram
you
guy.
could. I said you could pick anybody you want, and
I'll
I
remember this for next
carefully
time.
select this one. But going back to the earlier conversation before we end this segment, there is absolutely nothing in this frame that does not belong. Like everything in this frame belongs in this frame. So
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm gonna
Yeah.
go ahead and Grandmaster W. Eugene Smith myself, if he has not already been Grandmastered. He is an honorary Grandmaster of Photography for me, and hopefully for other viewers as well. So
I think he would be the Grand Dragon Wizard. I think he's at. I think Gene Smith is, with respect to Gibson, I think Gene Smith is at a level above Gibson. And actually, Gibson knew Gene Smith, and I think and spoke about him very reverentially, as he talked about Cortege and Cartier-Bresson and Helmut Newton and a lot of other people. That's one of, just before we go, that's one of the things about getting a mentorship by somebody who's a known photographer. It's going to cost you more money, but when they're giving you advice, you're having a conversation with them about a conversation they had with Andre Cortege about composition, and it's
yep.
first person. So it's like, oh yeah, when I was talking to Cortege about this, one of the things that Cortege told him was a photographer needs to photograph everything, because he went over and Cortege was taking pictures of these little glass giraffes in his apartment. And that's certainly not what Andre Cortege is known for photographically. But he said to Gibson, a photographer has to photograph everything. So when back to our earliest thing, when you go out and you take those pictures of nothing, seemingly, you if you're good, if you get good at your craft, even when you take pictures of nothing, they're going to be good pictures of nothing.
Yeah.
And on that note,
come back to us, and then we will say our goodbye. All right. So now we are back here. Close this out. So yeah, I appreciate this conversation. Lots of great topic stuff that we covered. Hopefully some people got some useful information out of us speak about photography. I was going to say absolutely nothing, but there was actually a lot of content in here. And obviously these are just my opinion and Jim's opinion and how we feel. And maybe someone else feels the same as us. So going back to B&H Photo, if you ever need a 24 millimeter Summilux tested, you can send it to me and I will gladly accept it, and I'll play with it for a while before I send it back. Jim is anti-unboxing photo video person, so don't send him nothing. No, I'm joking. He absolutely would like some stuff too.
No, send me film. Send me film.
Film?
If Ilford wants to, I just bought an $80 bottle of Fixer that hopefully will last me a few months. But like, if somebody wants to send me, like Cinestill wants to send me something, or Lomography wants to send me something, like I'll happily shoot your film, man. I'd happily not have to pay for film, and I'll even do an unboxing video of the film. Anyway.
We will gladly unbox film. Speaking of, all right, so this is the last one for real. I still have yet to do my comparison of Portra 800 with Cinestill 800. So I do plan on doing that comparison. I'm still kind of, I don't know why there's balloons there. But there'll be something in the work, hopefully. I haven't shot a lot of film recently. I think, no excuse, I just haven't been shooting film a lot. Yeah, so, but I'll get back into it like I always do. And
I'm shooting like a lot of expired film right now, like 10-year-old plus expired film.
I do kind of want to try the Leica 50. When I seen 50 ISO, I was like, oh, that's for wide open shooting. And then I read the description, like this film was developed for your Summilux lenses. And I was like, I kind of knew what they were trying to go for. So
I don't know.
It's still hard to shoot.
I shoot Ferrania Orto 50, and on an M, I don't find 50 ISO film hard to shoot at. You just need to get okay with shooting low shutter speeds and just standing still.
But
I'm happy. I never shoot above the 60th, really ever anyway. So I'm totally happy to shoot at the 15th of a second. And I shoot the ortho all the time. I shoot it on my rollies as my primary stock on the rollies typically, and I've been shooting with the MP and a little bit less so on the R.
yeah,
But 50 ISO film. My biggest problem with the Leica film is that it's rebranded somebody else's film, but it's more money to
probably
rebrand it because
Ilford 50.
no, it's not Ilford. It's something else. I forget what it is, Ostia or something. I forget what it is, but it's like somebody said about it real online, like really fast what it was, and it's just like it's in a fancier box and a fancier canister, and it's a few more dollars a roll than the stock that it's actually based on. So if that's what floats your boat, great. But 50 ISO film, if you're shooting it on an M, shoot it at a 15th, shoot it at a 30th. Just learn how to hold the camera without moving.
I'll give you something to try. I actually really like lomography films. Right,
Agree. Yeah,
cheap,
100.
affordable, and three of my favorite films that they have is they have a Metropolis. I like this orange hue, but it's really hard to get. Yeah, I got to get the lighting conditions right to get the color effect that the film has. But Lady Gray 400, that's one, and then there's two really slow. And I say slow, like the ISO's like 13 and 8. Try those out. Like the contrast on those are, I'm talking about blacks are black and whites are white, and few and far between. So really great to play with. It's hard to shoot to get a balanced image that's like usable in some regard. So play around with it, see what you like, and
I'm gonna do a rare social media flex right now, which is if you go onto the Lomography Instagram page, a picture I took at the Coney Island Sideshow is featured on there, yeah, on their feed
nice.
in the past week, and it was shot with over 10-year-old expired Lomography 100, which is a stock I'm using a lot now. It's because it's unlike most 100 color speed film, it's really grainy, and
Mm-hmm.
the color looks very vintage. But on an expired roll, the picture that I got with it was shot with a with the R9 with a 100 millimeter lens on it at a super low shutter speed. But that'll show you kind of what that film can do and what a low shutter speed will do in a low light environment. Just
Yeah,
that. Don't be scared. Don't be scared to shoot at slow shutter speeds. You might be surprised. But anyway, that's my flex for the week.
yeah. I don't have a flex this week. I'll have to one up you next week, or
All
not.
right. That,
I won't. I'm not a one upper. I don't like to be one up. So that was jokes, by the way. Anywho, I will challenge you
uh,
to do some research, use ChatGPT, go down some dark rabbit holes. That's to all the fans, listeners, and supporters. Literally type in anything that you're thinking about photography, and you'll be surprised what you get. I've been using AI to help me learn, other than using it to generate images, which is also fun. I've been messing around with that. Not street photography. I like to take pictures of myself and make them into Funko Pops. So that's pretty cool, and you get some pretty cool results. So, Jim, any last words before we depart?
just that, like you said before, these are all opinions. I don't want anybody to think that anything I said or we said about any of the photographers here is fact. It's opinion. And as much as we might have opinions about how other people approach their work, those opinions might be completely off base. They're just based on a superficial appreciation of what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody who's out there doing it, creating stuff, putting things that they make into the universe instead of destroying things deserves all the love. So all respect to everybody that we mentioned, whether you like their work or don't like their work. Definitely respect the fact that people are out there making things and trying to make the world a beautiful place. And if that resonates with you, cool. If it doesn't, cool. We all like different things. And my opinion is just that. It's just my opinion. And I'm definitely interested to hear other people's opinions. So please leave those in the comments.
Yeah, hit the like, drop some comments. Negative ones will be blocked. I don't care about it, but yeah, keep it positive. We're here to learn and just share that. I think that's all I got.
Cool.
Look forward to the next one. And to all the fans, listeners, supporters, I appreciate you, Jim. Appreciate you. I appreciate you, Jim. And
Appreciate you, Rick.
continue doing what you do. And look out for the next one. So
Shout out to
appreciate it.
Japan, where Ricky is.
And the band with the weird alien bass guitarist. I'm never gonna
Mick
find
Karn, Japan.
All right.
Anyway, from New York. See you.
All right.
NYC.
Goodbye.